But I don't know if you guys have seen the movie or not. Have you guys seen it? I know Lenore has. No, you don't have to have seen it because we'll talk about the pertinent parts. It's not everybody's genre. But Wonder Woman 1984 was released during the pandemic in 2020 as a sequel to the original Wonder Woman movie, which is a 2017 movie. So I won't try to rehash the plot of the original movie or even this movie really, except to say that Wonder Woman is an Amazon superhero. It's from comic book, Marvel comic fame. It's a movie, that Marvel put into reality. And Wonder Woman is an Amazon superhero who uses her power in our world for good. She's chosen to do that. Okay, so he's a female superhero, in other words. And what we'll be doing today is taking a look at the movie from a theological perspective. Where's God in this? Or where's their ideas about God? Or where's their faith in God? How is God at work or not, in the movie? And what we'll be asking ourselves is where, if at all, this movie aligns with Christian faith in a couple of scenes that I'll tell you about. Okay. In other words, where in the thought world of Wonder Woman can the thought world of Christ Jesus be found? So, we do this all the time, particularly you EFM grads, are trained to do that. So we'll get a forum in a few weeks about, that from an EFM perspective. But here we are with Wonder Woman. So at the start of Wonder Woman 1984, we get a flashback to Wonder Woman, so known in our world as Diana Prince. But we get to see her as a child at the start of the movie. And she was Princess Diana in her world. Her mother's the queen. And she was learning about who she was and how to be great, which is to say she was learning about truth, And the opening scene sets the whole stage for the whole movie. Should she be rewarded for her innovation?
It's a tough question. I'm not sure. She proved to be resourceful.
Yeah, don't we reward resourcefulness in our culture?
Well, were the rules clear?
Don't know. But it makes you think. Go ahead, Linda.
Well, wasn't another factor that really stuck out with me is she was so much younger. Younger people can do more athletically than people that are older. I found in my old age. So didn't she have an advantage right there?
Yeah, or a disadvantage.
Yeah.
Well, whatever the rules were, her mother said, or the other woman said, truth is what's important.
So what's happening here is making this the first scene of the movie sets a clear bedrock. There's a message here that truth is what's important. Now this is in her world of Amazon or Amazonia or wherever that is.
You can't shortcut.
You can't shortcut truth, right? She took a shortcut in the Olympic Games when otherwise she would have lost. And this is her trainer, this is her aunt, kept her from finishing or winning the game. It's because of truth. And it didn't really matter whether there was time for her to be great later or not. Even if she had been older and there wasn't time, she couldn't win because it wasn't true. Her claim she should be rewarded for her innovation and cleverness. And then, her mother's claim, the queen, no true hero is born from lies, And in our world, Diana Prince, which as Wonder Woman is a hero, a true hero. So we would reward cleverness, but in her world, there's an insistence that no true hero is born from lies. And it sets up the whole movie, so you're hunting now for truth. And you're comparing it, hunting for instances where there's a false image of truth. And I want to say here, one might be interpreted to, or sort of tempted to interpret the statement politically. But if we do so, it shortchanges what I think of as a much deeper, more fundamental conversation that the movie works real hard to evoke about whether we're willing to jettison truth in exchange for immediate gratification of getting whatever we desire the most. And you'll see how that our desires and getting it, getting what we desire plays out later in the movie. In other words, though, it's about a political consequence of what I think of as online existence, where we have online, we can get whatever we want immediately, and the movie's really asking, is that true about our world? Is that some truth we want to invest in, So,
Well, doesn't that also address the ends versus means issue that we run into so often in life?
exactly.
You take a shortcut, do something that's not quite right because of the greater good at the end. And that's a really hard one.
That's a hard one. And this movie comes down really hard on that's wrong,
Yeah.
So we're going to explore the truth angle today. And we Christians insist there is objective truth and objective goodness, and that we can know them and we should aspire to them. I mean, that's the claim of Christianity. This was Plato's argument before Christianity, as well as Augustine and C.S. Lewis, just to name a few of the theologians who've spent a lot of time thinking about that. Okay. And it's the idea of drawing us back to the reality of our world, as opposed to whatever we construct, an image we construct in our head. So think about it in terms of online presence and Facebook or one of the other, Instagram or wherever, where we curate our life, and show the world a portion of our life, which is true in that instance, but is it true overall? It's kind of what this movie is trying to get at. So the characters in the movie, there are four main characters. Diana Prince on the right here, you see I labeled her so you'd know who she was. And Barbara Minerva on the left. Okay, two men, Steve Trevor and Max Lord. Max Lord. That was sort of obvious as a name, wasn't it? Max Lord. He's the bad guy. Diana Prince is Wonder Woman. And she's living in our world, working in the Smithsonian Institution by day and foiling master criminals regularly, like superheroes do. And she appears to have everything. She has superpowers, poise, charm, and the ability to walk in ultra high heels, which is why I circled her shoes. So, not only does she all of those things, she can do stuff. But her life seems empty as portrayed in the movie. She's lonely and she's seemingly void of close connections with other people. And she's still grieving the death of the love of her life some 70 years ago, a World War I pilot named Steve Trevor. Okay, so he died. Steve Trevor died. You'll see him in a minute. 70 years ago, saving humanity. And Diana's shown here with Barbara Minerva when they met. Okay, Barbara's the second major character in the movie, and she's likable, at least at first. She's very likable, but she's awkward and super clumsy. So she slides around in her high heels and drops her stuff. And she met Diana when Diana helped her pick up her papers. Okay, and Barbara's a new Smithsonian employee, and she envies Diana's poise and charm and the fact she seems to have it all. She really envies that she can walk in those high heels too. So to digress just a little bit, before I tell you about the other two main characters. Okay, the Smithsonian is given a Dreamstone, and this is a Dreamstone. It's a little dark and hard to see. Okay, Barbara's tasked with categorizing it. What is it? When was it? What is it for? That kind of thing. Turns out, spoiler alert, the stone gives the person holding it their greatest wish. Right away, whatever you wish for, your greatest wish, you have it. But as they find out later, the stone takes in return what they value the most, takes their greatest possession. Okay? It's just set up this way, before they figure out what it is. If they're holding it and they wish for something, they get it. And then they find out later they lose something. One of the fan magazines explains that the Dreamstone is a worthless, otherwise worthless citrine stone, whatever a citrine is, that was created by the god of treachery and mischief. I guess they got that from one of the Marvel comics. It certainly doesn't come up in the movie. But this god of treachery and mischief, gave this stone the power to grant any wish that is made in its presence, but only one per person. And the wish comes at a cost. Okay. And in the comics, the stone is linked to the collapse of several societies. People began wishing, and it just destroyed their world. Okay. So the stone is temptation, not embodied in Satan, but more realistically in each of us. Okay. So the Dreamstone is just how they tell us it's a mechanism for enabling our selfish wishes to come true. Okay. You with me so far?
Mhm.
Wonder what you would wish for if you could. You may not be able to share that. You might be able to share or willing to share it. Something that pops to your head, Barbara wishes to be just like Diana. She doesn't know Diana's Wonder Woman, so she doesn't know about her superpowers, but she gets Diana's likability, confidence, and her superpowers. And slowly throughout the movie, the early and middle part of the movie, she figures out, she has these superpowers. Like suddenly, she doesn't need her glasses to see. Suddenly she's in the gym and she can lift more than the 10 pounds she usually lifts. That sort of thing. But she loses her humanity and she becomes anything but good. We'll return to that in a minute. Okay. Steve Trevor on the left is the third major character in the movie. He returns without explanation to life at Diana's wish. That's her greatest wish. She wishes for Steve back. But he's in another man's body. He looks different. She recognizes him, but he's Steve, but he's different. So why in another person's body? He got killed in the 2017 Wonder Woman movie while trying to save humanity, while saving humanity. And because his body was destroyed, Warner Brothers tells us, his soul appears in the body of another man. Okay? And they're thinking, he was killed, so therefore he can't be in his own body because his body was destroyed. And they're thinking his soul is what lives on. And I have to tell you, that's a distinctly unchristian theology. Of all the things in this movie, that's the most theologically untrue, But I won't argue the point here or try to persuade you of it, because I know that most of you would resist this thinking and most of you would agree with Warner Brothers. It's our soul that lives on, not our body, you would think. So it's a topic for another forum once I get brave enough to tackle it again, because the last time I alluded to it, it was bad news for me. It was in the context of another forum. And you're all like, what? It's our soul that lives on. But here's Steve, and he's in someone else's body, but Diana knows who he is. And it's amazing that he's in the background of this movie because he's kind of a pale image. Diana's the one that's in the forefront. In exchange for Diana getting her wish, she begins to lose her superpowers. So that's what the Dreamstone took from her in exchange for getting Steve. Now, Steve uniquely didn't wish for anything, perhaps because he already had Diana back thanks to her wish, but he is a fairly flat character. The fulfillment of Diana's wish, he seems more like an appendage of her in his own right. Sorry, guys. There's other male superheroes, so we'll have to turn to them for something other than being a shadow of Wonder Woman. So, the fourth main character is Max Lord, a con man who's great only in his own mind. He gets his wish, which cleverly is to become the Dreamstone. That's what he wishes. He doesn't want one wish, you see. He wants to become the Dreamstone and get everybody else's wish. what he does is he uses his new powers to get other people to wish for what he wants. Okay? And each successful wish makes Max more and more ill. For example, here's what Max looked like before he started in this picture. And then this picture here is what he looked like before. And here's on the left is what he looked like as he used the stone more and more. He became more and more fixated on getting more and more. Sort of like an addiction. So those are the four main characters. Back to Diana and Barbara. This is Barbara after she got, her wish. Suddenly she's, no glasses, not awkward. She suddenly has self-confidence. She's self-possessed. She's full of Diana's superpowers. Go ahead.
He can walk on heels.
Yeah, she can. That's why the heels are there. Instead of putting her new superpowers to work, though, for good, like Diana, she used them to hurt people and to oppose Diana. Okay. So, for example, the old Barbara was awkward and clumsy. She couldn't even walk in high heels. And as a funny aside, I did put in the shoes she was wearing when she had this outfit on at a party. Okay. Apparently, it's one thing to be a superhero, and it's quite another playing a female superhero dumb to be able to walk in spiky high heels. That's
Not only high heels, but platforms.
yeah. I mean, how can you even think about walking in things like that? She seemed to levitate in them, But here's the thing. I began to wonder. I'm going to ask you at this point. If she was just like Diana and Diana was good, how is it that she could be anything but good?
Good question.
Any ideas?
It was written into the script.
Yeah. But I wondered about that. And at first I thought this was just a error in the movie. But the more I thought about it, I realized it was brilliant.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense.
No, it doesn't.
Is it showing free will?
Aha! See, now, Bible study every week. It's sooner or later somebody mentions free will. Whenever there's a question that we can't answer, the answer is either free will or Jesus. Think about it. So I'm going to stop this share just a minute. We'll come back to it. So free will, how would free will play out here?
He wanted one part of her not to be like the other one.
Yeah. So there's two people who have the same gifts now, just like her. But you get to choose how you're going to use them.
But also something was taken away from her too. Was that what was taken away? It was her kindness.
Yeah, you got it. See, you could have written the script here. This is really good. And what she loses in exchange is some of her humanity.
Right.
Because she was really likable. She was a klutz, but she was really likable before.
And what's more important?
Yeah. So it made me think, I could be just like some good person, but I'd still have to choose for myself how I'm going to use the gift. Wait, there's a guy that she runs in the park, and there's a guy that keeps trying to accost her. Now that she has superpowers, she threw him across the street. I lightened this. It's so dark that the movie guys show it really dark because it's dark in her heart. She didn't leave him just across the street. She went over and kicked him. And the movie doesn't make clear. Maybe she kicked him to death. And he did assault her. He did try to, do her harm. But Wonder Woman didn't do those kind of things. So, her humanity, likability is gone. So, if we were theologians, and we are, we might say free will, and this movie, without directly asserting it, is making a claim that even if we have the same gifts and abilities, we still each have an individual choice we have to make. That choice somehow involves a relationship with truth. I'm thinking here of truth with a capital T, you know? Truth. Now, so I saw this cartoon, really. It's brilliant, you know? In the past, we would say truth is real. And it's ground zero. And I think therefore I am. But in the post-truth era in which we're living, the idea is I believe, therefore I'm right. If I believe it, it's true. You know?
Yeah.
And it's not, it doesn't go with any one political agenda or idea. It's the whole society. Our whole society is in a post-truth era. And that puts us a little bit at odds as Christians with that, because we know there's truth. It's Christ Jesus in God. But the movie is asking us to consider, are we putting our gifts and abilities at the disposal of truth? Or are we bending our view of truth to get ahead, like Diana did in her version of the Olympic Games? So here's the lie of the Dreamstone. Every person has to choose how they use the gift that God given them. We can't become somebody else because we have to make our own choices. And there's always, I think there's always a lie embedded in a shortcut. As if winning or outdoing someone else is the yardstick by which we should measure ourselves instead of love or truth. And that's what our culture's about. You know, who's ahead? Who has more money? Who has more power? Who has more fame? You know, how much do we need? And this movie asks us to consider that. For example, you could buy the patent for making insulin and increase the cost by 1,000% because everybody who's a diabetic needs it. You know, and if you're the one with the patent and you control the distribution, you can do that, like someone did. You'd be taking a shortcut to success. You'd be rich, and you would have won at the game our culture has made of life. But you would or should then know in your heart of hearts, if we have one, that winning isn't the way, this way isn't really winning. You know, it's stealing, really. And we each have to give up something for the shortcuts we take in truth. I think that's real. So I'm wondering if you've experienced that in either yourself or someone else. Is that really true? Do we really have to give up something for all those little shortcuts we want to take? Stop this share. Can you think of a non-political time when you observe someone taking a shortcut to truth? I named one. What did the person who did the insulin cost increase lose? Got a great new house.
Well, their values and their morals.
Pretty soon, the more you do it, the more you lose sight of the fact that there's anything wrong with it.
Yeah.
It can also cause a disaster because look at the condominium in Florida. A lot of people knew the truth, but no one was willing to claim it. And so therefore it fell down.
It's a great example. Maybe it wasn't made right. Maybe it wasn't inspected right. Maybe they just thought it cost too much money. Look at all those people who died. So I thought of an instance that's kind of germane to something else. And I thought about taking this out, but I didn't. So you tell me whether this works or not. I'm going to start the screen share again if I can. There. Have you heard of Hall's Hill Wall?
Yeah,
Yeah, Arlington.
right.
Okay. One of our Sacred Ground participants discovered and shared this week the historical reality that many communities built physical walls between white and black neighborhoods in the 50s to enforce segregation as the developments for whites and blacks got closer together. And there was a wall like that in Arlington. Perhaps there's one in Alexandria. I don't know. Does anybody know? I haven't found one, but probably. But here's the lie. See, we can cast out all the things we think of as negative human traits. We can put them in a big pile. Negative outcomes, negative traits. And we can put them on one set of people, you know, whoever that one set is, that isn't us, immigrants or somebody else, you know. And then physically wall them off from us. And then our traits that are negative will be gone. We've tried this a lot as human beings. The Germans tried it with the Jews, of course, during the Holocaust in the most extreme way. But this is played out over and over and over again. So it's not like any of us are immune. But this is how we try to rid ourselves about the things we don't like, you know, like poverty. I heard this week something that rocked me to the core. A woman said, have you ever noticed that we white people don't admit there's poor white people outside of Appalachia? So, you know, Appalachia is where we know there are poor white people there, but nowhere else. You know, everywhere else is somebody else, whatever the somebody else is. I digress. That wasn't in the movie Wonder Woman 1984. It's just an example of how we can let our wishes, in a way, blind ourselves to truth. You know, that we can take what we don't like about ourselves and put it on somebody else. Or we can take what we want and don't have and wish it, you know, immediately wish it. And no matter how we get it, it'll be okay.
I'm just thinking of about that wall, that people were focusing on the negative. And B. Taylor recommended a book to me called Braiding Sweetgrass.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about indigenous peoples' philosophies about living, written by an author that it was, by nature she was a botanist, but she actually went to school, got several degrees in botany. So she understood the earth, plants, and what have you from her experiences as a human being, as well as from the standpoint of a scientist. And one of her chapters focuses on gratitude. And it's, if people could focus on gratitude, all the things that we have to be thankful for, instead of the negatives, I don't think we'd be in a situation like that.
Yeah.
And for some of the indigenous people who are very nature oriented, they're thankful for trees, birds, water, plants, everything that the earth has to offer, instead of this competition between people and who's right and who's wrong.
Yeah. So you've named a few of the miracles that Wade mentioned in his sermon.
It's a
What are you?
book. I would highly recommend it to anyone who would like to have a different perspective on
Judy, what was the title of the book again?
Braiding Sweetgrass.
Thanks.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm writing that down. Go ahead.
When I was growing up, you know, I'm a native Alexandrian. There was a block where actually Widow Wilson Bridge is now going in, and empty, because they were walking it before they built the one. And then suddenly decided they had covered it with asphalt and buildings. And later on found out that they had not even looked at the owners, and it was actually a graveyard of black slaves across from St. Mary's Cemetery.
Wow.
And they didn't even think about it or care about it. So since then, the last probably 20 years or more, everything's been taken back and restored as best they could. But it was, no one thought about or cared the fact that it was black cemetery. They just paved it over, put some buildings and a gas station.
That's happened a lot with Native people too.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was near the end of the movie when the two women sort of faced off against each other. But you can see from that, that even though Wonder Woman defeated Diana, when she became an arch villain named Cheetah, that she still cared for her. She still was very gentle with her. She still apologized, for the fact that she was defeating her. And she brought her up out and put her down, and it looks like she's dead, but maybe she isn't. And we'll get to that, in a minute. But the whole idea is if you contrast sort of what Diana became versus the reality of who Diana was versus who Barbara Minerva became, it's a stark difference, but they had the same powers. Kind of weird.
So, Joe, was there a significance to her looking very angelic in her costume with the wings?
Oh yeah. And, it's sort of overstated so that you get the idea. I mean, like Max Lord,
Yeah.
Give me a break. No, if I'm sharing. It's hard to do both of this at the same time, but we will get there.
Joe, has this movie been released?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
And it was on Netflix. Well, it's on Netflix too, but HBO Lenore, didn't you say it?
HBO's been on for several weeks, and in fact, they ran it this morning. They run it fairly frequently.
And the reason came out during the pandemic, so they released it to all those places, Netflix and HBO and all that, when it came out, because they knew people wouldn't be going to see it in movie theaters. Here's another example, one that's more directly related to the movie. There was a story written in 1902 by a man named W.W. Jacobs called The Monkey's Paw. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. But the concept that the Dreamstone is admittedly based on is the monkey's paw. And in that story, whoever owns an object, the monkey's paw, which is shown here, gets 3 wishes granted, but the wishes come at a huge cost. So, for example, a man wishes for today's equivalent of $1 million. And he has a knock on the door and he gets $1 million. He's awarded damages for $1 million for the death of his only child. So, it's you get your wish, but there's a huge price attached to it. And it's kind of the stuff, the monkey's paw, the stuff that the Twilight Zone, scripts are based on. It makes you think second thoughts. And this movie it says in it, the Steve Trevor character refers to the monkey's paw once they figure out that their wish comes true, but there's a cost attached, And the question is for all of us, and I won't ask you to say this out loud, but what shortcuts in truth, have we taken? Are we perhaps willing to admit to? And I've told you many times that I used to, before I came out as gay, I used to, edit my pronouns all the time. Oh, we went and did this, especially when I was in the Navy before Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Oh, so-and-so did, but it was never a gender affixed with Lenore. That was correct. And it sounds innocuous because I was protecting myself. But what I learned is that once you choose to be untrue, to let untruth in, it sneaks in another way. I call it opening a back door in truth, that maybe you take a shortcut that seems okay for good cause, maybe even, but eventually there's a price you have to pay for it. And in my case, I had to sort of reset my whole idea of ground truth and be true to who I really am. Anyway, that's my story, and I let you share your story if you want to. So in the end of the movie, Diana realized she had to stop living her greatest dreamed of lie. And she did so by renouncing her wish. Okay? And to my surprise, she simply said, I renounce my wish. Is that as easy as that? I renounce my wish. Renounce my wish. It wasn't an easy choice, though. It was easy to do because she had to give up that which she had wished for. In this case, she had to give up the love of her life, Steve Trevor, who obediently disappeared out of existence. He did so, by the way, after telling Diana in his final scene, "I'm already gone," which was true, literally. I'm already gone. And in the end, Diana declared, the world was a beautiful place just as it was. You can't have it all. You can only have the truth, and the truth is enough. The truth is beautiful. Dead fiance and all. So the other two main characters also renounce their wishes and abandon their pursuit of riches and glory because it's, turns out okay. In the end, it's a superhero movie. At least Max did, okay? The movie deliberately makes Barbara's outcome ambiguous. You saw Wonder Woman defeat her by holding her underwater and sort of electrocuting her with that sparkly cord thing she had. And she then left Barbara unconscious while she defeated Max Lord. And in the end of the movie, we see Barbara atop the dam. I didn't show this to you. But now she's looking human again, She's not in her cheetah outfit. She's got her glasses on. She sits alone and she's roughed up from the fight. She has a pained yet determined look on her face. And I'm thinking perhaps there'll be another sequel, in the making that will resolve her status one way or another. So having explained all that to you, one of the things we do when we reflect theologically is to ask ourselves what connections we can think of between this situation, in this case, the movie plot, and Scripture. So does the movie storyline evoke any connections with Scripture for you? I know there's no place in the Bible where a superhero fights evil, right? But truth? Making a bad choice vis-a-vis truth?
Well, you could look at David as being somewhat of a superhero.
Yep.
Who also made some bad choices.
Excellent example. Thank you.
God loved him anyway.
And in the end, didn't he just renounce his bad choice? I mean, there were consequences. His son died. His beloved son died. But I renounced him. And then we got all of Psalm 51 where he prayed asking for forgiveness.
Is renouncing our bad choice the same thing as confession?
I hope so. And that's not a joke. I really hope so. And I struggled with that. So here's the theological part of the question you're asking. So it's a good one. You're saying, is it enough to just renounce your bad choice? Or do you have to do something else?
Also, I was thinking maybe this wasn't a bad choice, but the temptation of Jesus, he is offered all these different.
Yeah. And he gave us a good example of how you fight this temptation,
Yeah.
Quote Scripture. And live by faith that you can get those things that are offered to you the easy way, another way, or that they're not worth having. So that was another good example. Back to Marilyn's question though, is it like confession? And we argue with this. There's no right answer. Is it enough to just confess your sin, or do you have to do something?
I was thinking of Joseph and his brothers, and he made a lot of wrong choices there. And then after everything he went through in Egypt and they came to him, at first he didn't make good choices and then he did. But in the end, what was important was that he reconciled with the brothers. He came to reconciliation, and that's what confession is. But he took some actions. He didn't just say, I'm sorry, I treated you wrong. He asked them to live with him, etc.
Yeah.
Don't go back and do you want to do something better then. You don't go back and do what you did, that you can't confess and then go back and do the wrong thing again.
I don't know. I do.
I mean, you can't, I know.
Yeah, I know. You don't want to. You
You
shouldn't.
don't want to.
Guard against it. And as you live a new reality, it becomes easier to avoid that.
Right.
So I'm with you on that. Thank you. And you know, it may be that the confession, the renouncing is enough for God. Maybe that we humans need that other bit for closure, you know, to convince ourselves that we're going to live differently.
Right. I think so.
Any other examples? They've all been good so far. I think the Bible's chock full of good examples.
I don't remember. What, did David do something to reconcile besides renouncing?
I don't know, but he prayed on his face for days and days. He literally fell on his face and was repentant. I don't know what he did.
I don't know that, because falling on his face praying is part of what I would call confession and his relationship with God in that. But when you're talking when you're Louise and other people are talking about reconciliation, I think we're talking about what you do with another human that you've wronged in some way.
Yeah. And so Uriah the Hittite was already dead, but he had married Bathsheba, you know. And so, you know, what did he do afterwards? Now, his family situation was a mess. So one could argue that the outcome of all that hints that he didn't do enough, but we don't know. You know, all of his children trying to be his successor, take over from him before he was dead. You know, it's kind of an outcome of that chapter in his life.
Yeah, forgiveness does not necessarily mean you don't have to live with the consequences of whatever you've done, right?
Yeah. So in the movie, that's theologically, that's a place where it isn't true to life, in essence. You know, everybody, I renounce my wish. And suddenly it was poof, all back, you know, the way it was. Wow. Would that life would be that way.
Yeah, because you're in life, you are sometimes you're in the same situation and you have more temptation. Yeah. I mean,
And there are consequences, you know, in real life. Obviously, when you shoot and kill somebody, they're still dead, even after you renounced whatever it is that you did.
Yeah, it almost seems like a shortcut, just say, I renounce.
I renounce him. But it starts there. So the theology of that wasn't so good. I mean, it started out good. You have to renounce it. You do. But they didn't show us any consequences.
But did they know at the beginning that if they made this wish that there was going to be consequences to the wish? I mean, did they do it in innocence, not knowing that something would be taken away from them?
That's true. And that's real life. You know, when we take a shortcut. I mean, in reality, Diana should have known that Steve Trevor shouldn't come back from being dead.
Yeah.
He wasn't really, he was flat.
There's an old saying, if it's too good to be true, it's probably too good to be true.
So did the people, when they made this script for this movie, I'm fascinated by how clear some of the theological threads are and the way some of the language they're using. Who writes them, and do they do it deliberately?
Oh, I don't know who wrote this. I do know it's based on Marvel Comics.
Right. But I mean, you could get the same story without using some of the language that you're talking about. So I just wonder about how that's.
Who
that's
wrote
cool.
Wonder Woman 1984? I love Google and being online. Written and directed by Patty Jenkins. The director wrote it. Based on a story that she had written. Huh. Just tells you who, it doesn't tell you why. So we'd have to go explore who Patty Jenkins is other than a director and writer. But it's fascinating, like you say. I was watching the movie and I'm like, wait a minute. She was just like, if she was just like Wonder Woman, shouldn't she be good? And Lenore's like, just watch the movie. and it was a little hard because, but it took me a while. And I figured out, I changed my mind about it. At first I thought they were wrong. And I think they got it deeply right. And like you, Marilyn, I think they intentionally did that and they focused on that. Anybody else?
It sounds like at the start, with respect to being good and nice, she was like Wonder Woman. Before, yeah.
She just didn't realize it. Think about that. We each have our own gifts,
Yeah, I was just thinking that, if she wanted to be somebody else, then, she wasn't using her, she wasn't developing herself.
Yeah.
And
How
God
many
has
times
it-
have we done that though?
Yeah, I know. But
I
God
compare
has-
myself, yeah.
God has something for each of us.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's kind of a simplistic thing, but there it is staring us in the face in this movie. It's a great story if you're into that genre. But besides that, look at the themes that they picked out for us. All right. So, anybody else?
I would like to say something a little on the movie, but off topic of the movie, what we've been
Go
talking
for it.
about. If you go and see it, when you're in the mall, that was Landmark Shopping Center's mall, because that's where they filmed all the mall scenes. And when you see the mechanical horse on the outside and the cotton candy machine, that was just to the left of the door where Carpenter Shelter was while the new building was being built. So if it kind of looks familiar on the inside structurally, it's because they used Landmark Mall. And while they were there filming, they hired some of the people in the shelter to act as security overnight. So they brought some money to the people that were living in the shelter at the time.
Wow.
Also, at one point, when I found out about this, we drove through the parking lot, and the parking lot was full of cars from the 50s? Or anyway,
Yeah.
Old cars.
old
Yeah.
cars. Yeah, that was sort of interesting.
It was before it was full of Amazon trucks.
Yes.
I kind of like the idea, though, that it was the superhero was a woman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We
There you have it.
haven't had enough women.
And even the villain was a woman too.
Yep, there you go.
Cheetah.
It balanced out.
All right. Thanks, guys, for coming.
Thanks.
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good week,
You
everybody.
too.
Good.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.